Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. It's Leo Gabriel here again from revitalizeyourself.com. Today we're going to talk about 10 foods that we think are healthy, but are actually causing us to gain weight and have all sorts of health problems. These are 10 foods that we consider healthy that are actually unhealthy. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the first food, fruit juice. Many of you think, oh, fruit juice is full of nutrients and antioxidants. But the fact is, fruit juice is actually incredibly full of sugar, even if there is no added sugar, which is not the case with most fruit juices. Most fruit juices are going to have tons and tons of sugar added to them, that before you know it, you've been drinking 400 calories, 500 calories of pure sugar. On top of that, when you create juice from a fruit, you're not getting a lot of the fiber as well as the other nutrients you get from the pulp, from the actual fruit itself. So do yourself a favor, keep the fruit juices at a minimum, and stick with water as your main drink. Another similar drink that we have a similar problem with is kombucha. A lot of people drink kombucha because of its probiotic effects. Well, there are countless sources of probiotics that don't have dozens and dozens of grams of sugar in them, that don't have very few other nutrients in them. If you need probiotics, get probiotics from sources like NATO, get it from sauerkraut, get it from other pickled foods. Get your dairy products in. Get your healthy plain yogurt in. Kefir, Bulgarian yogurt, that's one of the best ones out there. But don't use kombucha as your source of probiotics. There are so many better options that aren't going to give you a big sugar rush, that aren't going to spike your blood sugar and cause you to start developing insulin resistance. So now let's talk about a food that's not necessarily an unhealthy food, but a food that's unhealthy because it gives us the false sense that we are being healthy. And I'm talking about greens that aren't very dense in nutrients, particularly cucumbers, iceberg lettuce, celery. Now, certainly these foods are rich in fiber, which we absolutely need. However, from a nutrient level, they don't have very many nutrients. And if we eat 7 cups of, say, iceberg lettuce, it might give us the false impression that we're getting 7 cups of good, healthy greens per day and that we're meeting our potassium levels, we're meeting our vitamin levels, when in reality, most of what we're getting is just pure fiber and water. So, these foods can easily mislead us because unlike the dark bitter greens, think spinach or kale, cilantro, so on, those greens that I just named, these bitter, dark, crispy greens that are full of so much potassium, so much magnesium, vitamins and minerals, those types of greens are the greens we really should be getting 5 to 7 cups of a day at minimum. Not these greens. That said, they're not unhealthy, but don't eat these in place of actual good, healthy, nutrient-dense greens, thinking that you're eating your greens, because you're not. Now, a lot of you probably have heard that, oh, I know Japanese food is healthy, particularly sushi. Well, maybe the center of it is you're getting a little bit of protein and perhaps some healthy fat through avocado. Maybe you're getting a little bit of fiber through some celery or cucumber that's in it. But what is most of the sushi made up of? The sushi is about 70 to even 75% sticky rice. That's not just plain nutritionless white rice. It's nutritionless white rice that's had sugar added to it so that it stays sticky. It doesn't have any nutrition in it. On top of that, most of us like to add soy sauce to our sushi, and that just adds more salt, more inflammatory omega-6s to our sushi, and it's more food that we really don't want to be eating. More food that's going to do us more harm than good. Low-fat foods. A lot of you who have been kind of more involved in health realize that low fat doesn't mean low calorie, and low fat certainly does not mean healthy. Well, if you make a food low fat, a lot of times it's going to turn bland. And bland food, it just doesn't sell. So to make a low fat food sell, because people aren't going to eat food that doesn't taste good, so to make a low fat food taste good, what are they going to add to it? They're going to add all sorts of sugars and artificial flavors. Then that's going to make this not even real food. It's going to make it extremely processed carbohydrates that aren't going to leave you full for long, that are going to spike your blood sugar, make you hungry later, and make you consume way more calories than you would otherwise if you just ate some whole real foods, even if they have a decent amount of fat in them. Now, you're probably confused. You're like, really? This? Hummus? I heard hummus is healthy for you. Well, first of all, a lot of people don't treat hummus for what it is. It's a starch. It's a starch with a little bit of protein added to it. That's what hummus is. That's not to say it's not good to add it into your diet. Some hummus in your diet is definitely good. It's a good source of fiber. It will give us protein. However, the protein that it gives us, like with most plant proteins, is incomplete, meaning it doesn't give us all the amino acids that we need, like more animal-based proteins would. So we're not quite getting all the amino acids we need from the protein, and we're also consuming a lot of starch, which is going to give us the insulin resistance effect of eating a lot of starches. However, worst of all about hummus is, ask yourself this: what are you typically dipping in this hummus? Chances are you probably just answered something like crackers or pita chips, white bread, processed carbohydrates with absolutely no nutrition that give you empty calories. That's what you're probably dipping in this, and that's why this secret food that we think of as a superfood sometimes can actually be a trap food. Now, fake meats. We were probably told time and time again since we were little that fake meat is better for you than non-fake meat. Well, that's not true. Because first of all, again, as we talked about plant protein, to get all the amino acids you need from plant protein, you need to eat a variety of plant protein. It's not going to give you all the amino acids that you need. On top of that, these foods are typically loaded with inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids, and they're typically loaded with preservatives and sodium, so many additives, so many non-real foods. They're typically heavily processed. Unless you're a vegetarian, you're better off just eating a real burger or eating a real chicken breast. Now, next one I'm going to go to is peanut butter. Now, I like peanut butter. It's a good source of protein, and yeah, it's also a good source of some healthy fat. However, ask yourself this: what's in the peanut butter that you're buying? Are you buying the good stuff where the ingredients are just peanuts and perhaps maybe salt and that's it? Or are you buying peanut butter that has tons of additives, that has soybean oil and canola oil added to it, that has all these artificial ingredients added to it? And also ask yourself this: what are you eating your peanut butter with? Are you dipping celery into it? Or are you putting it on a white bread sandwich with jelly, which is going to give tons of sugar, tons of starch, tons of empty calories with not really much fiber, protein, or nutrition to go with them? How are you eating your peanut butter? So yeah, peanut butter can be a good source of protein, but how and when do we eat it? And what kind of peanut butter do we choose? Are we actually getting the good stuff? Are we actually getting pure peanut butter when we buy peanut butter? Or are we getting more of the artificial stuff where peanuts aren't even the first ingredient sometimes? That's why peanut butter can often be secretly an unhealthy food that's making us overweight. Oats with water. Back in the 90s, when fats were considered the enemy, oatmeal was almost considered the ideal perfect heart health food. However, one thing you should know about oats, particularly about quick oats and instant oats, they have an insanely high glycemic index, and while they do have some protein and they do have a solid amount of fiber, they aren't overly nutrient dense. They are a great grain, they're a great whole grain, especially when you have steel cut oats. But when you eat them with just water, chances are you're probably not adding the fats with that oatmeal that'll help it digest slower. Chances are you're probably not adding whether it be regular milk, whether it be almond milk, you're probably not adding any nut butter or yogurt. You're probably not adding any fat to that oatmeal if you're cooking it with water. You're probably sweetening it with some brown sugar. And by doing that, you're cooking up a high glycemic sugar crash that's going to strike you very often early in the morning. So if you are going to eat oatmeal, stick with whole cut oats and make sure you eat it with some fats so it digests slower and keeps you full longer and doesn't give you that dreaded sugar crush that high glycemic foods will often give you. And finally, we'll save this for last: margarine and vegetable oil. We've heard time and time again how much better vegetable oil supposedly is. Well, we know that's not true. First of all, vegetable oil is made almost entirely of omega-6 inflammatory fatty acids. Our body uses saturated fats. Our body uses unsaturated fats. And yes, our body also uses the inflammatory omega-6 fats. However, if you're eating vegetable oil, and if you're eating a lot of it, chances are you're getting way more omega-6s than you're getting omega-3s. And because you have that high unbalance of omega-6s compared to omega-3s, it's causing an excess amount of inflammation. So just because it's lower in saturated fat does not mean it's not causing problems in our body. Saturated fat is not nearly as much of a problem as an unbalanced omega-6, omega-3 ratio is. And finally, margarine. Margarine, as we've talked about before, these are often made from hydrogenated oils. And hydrogenated is nothing more than a more marketable term for trans fat. Stay away from trans fat at all costs. Stay away from these margarines, these vegetable oils. If you really insist on having a dairy-free substitute for butter, you can make it yourself. make your own butter, make your own mayonnaise even, with healthier oils, with more monounsaturated oils. Make your own olive oil or avocado oil spread. Make something like that at home. But when you buy these things from a container, they're typically full of preservatives, they're typically full of lectins, they're typically full of hydrogenated fats that can do us far more damage than good. And there you have it. That's 10 foods that we often think are healthy, but are actually unhealthy when we take a closer look at them. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel and check out our website at revitalizeyourself.com. Next week, we'll do a similar video where we tackle 10 foods we often think are unhealthy, but are actually pretty healthy when you look more into it. We'll see you then.